First and foremost, like what we have discussed is an end-to-end flow of a particular application being onboarded. Onboarded in this is what I mean is as part of the access request system. All right. So we have seen that how a disconnected application or a connected application behaves. Okay. The process is 90% similar, but the only difference which comes up or wherein the difference comes up is the task provisioning part. So for disconnected applications, you either kind of come manually clear the tasks from the pending queue by accepting them, or if you have an API, a program on the target side which will complete the tasks through API calls, so you can use Savient's REST API services to complete the tasks as well. That's one thing. For connected applications, it is through the provisioning job, the WS retry which we have seen. Okay, so that's the kind of what should I call it? That's a go-to point for doing any provisioning from Saviynt. So Saviynt only has like that particular job, okay, which does provisioning for any kind of application. Okay, so we have seen that how do we create a job. You can go to admin job control panel, utility. In the bottom of the page you will see a provisioning job called as WS retry. Okay, so you schedule a job in accordance to the use case requirements of your customer. Okay, how soon you want to provision it, etc. And also you create a job for a particular application, or you can create one single job for all the applications as well. But ideally what we do is that we create each job for each application so that we can schedule it independently without conflicting to other applications, right? So that's something which we have seen it. We have seen a sample provisioning into DO, wherein have created a user. Uh, DO acting as a connected application for us. All right. Then group provisioning did not work through, did not go through basically. So that's something which I'll look at it a bit later. But the entire effort was to show you how provisioning happens through a connected application. Okay. For a connected application actually through Saviynt. All right. So that we have covered it, and we have covered a workflow as well, a basic workflow. Why I required that particular software is it acts as your local SMTP server through which I can send emails as part of the request flow. Okay, so I wanted to kind of do that, but I don't know, that is still not working. But once that is fixed, we can kind of go back there and check how that email templates thing work. Okay. Um, all right. So I'll talk about email templates, configurations, and the other necessary things when we come here. Okay. Sorry, not that. There's a configuration section somewhere. Manage and configure approval logic. This is workflow. Set up access request application use case modules in there. Let's try to fit in the configuration somewhere. Okay, let's try to close out role access request, and then we'll come back here. Okay. Any questions, Sudhir, before we proceed?
So now we are looking at which topic, Sudha?
Role provisioning, Sudhir. We'll check it. We'll go through role provisioning. Then we will cover configurations and workflows one more time, or whatever are the other necessary things, right? Say, for example, I would say other configurations. Say global config. Okay, we'll take a workflow. SMTP settings. Okay, email templates. What else is left out? Email templates, SMTP settings, global configurations, variables. Yeah, that can be covered in the email templates. That is fine. Yeah. So after completing our role access request topic, we will go through these things in furthermore. So there, okay. meaning let's see how much time we will have for roles. Okay, then afterwards we will go through this. Okay, there is another we can add. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. No, I said okay.
Yeah, and bulk request as well. Bulk user request and bulk file upload request. We'll check these two other things as well. All right. Cool. So let's get back here. So what are we trying to do right now is it's role provisioning or role request activity, right? So, all right. So we created certain roles in our last activity or last session or maybe a few sessions before. Like how do we create roles? What does each role mean? And what sits inside each role, correct? So we created some of them. Okay, we created three types of the roles initially manually. Then we did an upload activity as well, right? So I'll pick one of the role called as AMS team lead. Okay. We'll quickly go through what this kind of mean or consists of, and then we will go to an example of how this can be requested. Okay. All right. So, all right. So on the first screen itself, you have certain options that this role is requestable or not. So I say it as true. Okay. If I mark it as false, this role would not be visible on the ARS screen. Okay, the access request screen. Correct. So let me duplicate it. I'll go to ARS. Okay. I will talk about the tiles in a bit. But yeah, so this is about whether the role can be requested or not. Okay. There are dynamic attributes. Okay. Meaning if you want again some filtration options or something across the roles, you can have dynamic attributes created here. All right. Other attributes of the role, they see as we are doing a kind of an understanding session here or a overview session. I did not kind of complicate it, but as we kind of discussed earlier, uh, you can put in some values here depending upon your use cases, right? Say, I have 20 roles. I'll just reiterate my example. I have 20 roles, and 10 roles have to go to one user group for approval, and 10 other have to go to another user group for approval. So what I'll do, I'll say here, say user group one, okay, or some value, say for example requestable or something here. So when somebody requests for a particular role, the workflow will check what is the custom property. Okay. If the custom property is so and so, then send it to one group, user group for approval. If not, send it to other user group for approval. Okay. And as well, you can use this custom properties in your provisioning as well if you want it. Meaning, um, uh, how should I put it? Say if it is a REST connector, right? For example, or any connector, for example. Okay, you can use roles custom property, have a value here, and pass that value whenever a provisioning happens against this role. So you can do that as well. All right. Role owners, as we discussed, they come into picture whenever I'm performing a certification. Okay, we have a role owner campaign wherein a role is certified, whether it is whether kind of meaning the users possessing that role are valid or not, etc. and all. Okay, so we have that particular certification which works against role owners. Okay, and again users to whom this role has been assigned, entitlements, the entitlements which are part of this role, etc. and all. Okay, so that is the high level definition of a role. Okay, and what this role actually kind of means, right? So I'll mark this as select here and I'll update. Okay, cool. Now the second step for us to remember or kind of perform during configure, meaning during the sorry, role request thing is that go and kind of update certain configurations in the global configurations for roles. Okay, you have a separate configuration section or a tab for roles altogether. Okay, your ARS configurations fall under a tab called as home. Okay, your role related configurations fall under the tab called as roles. Okay, so there's no kind of intersection between both of this. All right. So I'll click on roles global configuration. All right. Few things here. You can mark certain attributes which not certain attributes, whether say comments, whether you require it at approval stage or a rejection stage, etc. and all. We'll talk in detail about the global configurations a bit later. Okay, but let's try to put certain configurations which are required for our role request. Okay, so all right. All right. For the role configuration, so what you do, you go to global configurations, admin, configurations, global configurations, and roles. Okay. When you land on this page, you need to update two values here for workflows. All right. One for adding the roles, for removing the roles. Right now, I do not have any workflow here. All right. So what I'll do, I'll create a workflow right now and put that workflow here. All right. Before creating a workflow, right, you may have a question that what kind of workflow do I need to use, or what has to kind of come and sit here, correct? You can use any kind of a workflow you want. You can use a manager workflow or whatever it is, but always remember the fact that Saviynt has only one global configuration enabled for role request. Okay, in terms of workflows. So it's unlike a security system wherein each security system can have a different variety of a workflow. But for roles, there is only one single place wherein you can put the workflow, that is at the roles global configuration. Okay. So we discussed this point earlier, but I just wanted to show you and talk about that here. All right. First, I'll create a workflow. Okay. Before creating a workflow, I'll create a user group based workflow. Okay. So whenever a role is requested, I'm telling the system that go send this workflow request to a user group. Okay. Say, mm, let me put some name. What should I put? Mm, role approval user group. Okay. Then I'll add certain users here for approval. Okay. So I have about three. No, no, no. Down for this one. Okay. So I added these three gentlemen. Okay. There is the add button. Okay. I'm not putting any entitlements here currently. All right. So I'll come here, then create. I don't know whether those users have been added or not. Yeah, cool. So we have three users who are part of this particular user group. Okay. So I'll not touch any other tabs here. I have a user group. I have three users who are part of the user group. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll use this user group in my workflow. Okay. So I'll create a new workflow. All right. Mm, Request workflow. Okay. I'll simply do a start. All right. I'll do a custom assignment. Okay. User group. Okay. I don't know what is my user. You copy the name from here. I'll put my name. Okay. So here comes another configuration for a user group, right? So there are three users in the user group. Okay. Whenever a request is submitted, it would go to all the three users for approval. Okay. Approval. Okay. When it goes to all of them, you can tell the system that whether all of them need to approve it or one of them needs to approve it. Okay. So in that, to define that, you do it at a workflow element or a workflow block. Okay, type of an approval. I'm saying any owner approval is required or all owner approvals are required. So I'll say any owner approval is required. I'll not touch any of the configurations because one is related to mitigation controls, which we will discuss it later, and the others are related to email templates. All right, so I'm not doing anything related to email templates as well right now. Okay. Then I'll say grant, then I'll say rejected access. You can have an escalation block here. Okay, let's put that as well and see. Okay. So till here, what I have done, I have simply created a user group. Okay. I have put that user group in the workflow. Okay. I'm having an escalation here. All right. Mm, escalate to manager, for example. And I'll say when it has to escalate or after how many days it has to escalate. So I'll say 7 days. Okay. Then here I'll put manager approval. Okay. Escalation manager. Okay. I'm not selecting anything further. All right. If manager approves it, it goes to grant. If manager rejects, it goes to reject drop. Okay. Grant, reject. Okay. My workflow is completed. I'll send it for approval. Okay. So when I send my request workflow for approval, it goes for workflow approval section. Okay, it goes for an approval actually. So you should come back here to approval section and accept it. The workflow has been created. Alright, so my workflow is loaded and created. Alright, loaded and ready. It is active right now. Alright, so what I'll do, I'll come to my global configuration, refresh the screen. Where is my This is saved right now, correct? So my global configurations part is done. Alright. So there is no other thing which I kind of will tamper here or change it here, but I just wanted to add the workflow. Okay. I can have a delete button. Yeah, so, so once this is done, my workflow is loaded. This is ready. Now let's quickly change or create a sorry, change the SAV roles for the users who are present in the user group so that these people would only see um, role request tab at their side. Okay, so for that, let's create an SAV role. Or let me copy it also. Okay. This is active, done. Room to request. Request. Access to endpoints on. So here is one configuration which we need to look for. That is roles. Alright. So show roles, I'll say it as all. Okay, that is done. Then the other important thing for us is this particular tab. Okay, wherein I'll say manage roles. Let me put manage roles. Request emergency access. Request enterprise roles. Manage should update roles. Cool. Okay. Um, only. So these are sufficient. Let's update it. Okay. So 679001, right? So users have 679001. Save this. Alright. So I'll change the roles which are present for each of them. The SAV roles. So role approval is good. SAV roles role approval is good. Role approval is good. Alright. So what I will do, instead of worrying about changing the password for each of them, I'll change it from the database. So I have the things ready. What I was trying to do is that I was creating a I created a workflow wherein it goes to user group for approval. The user group has got 3 users inside it. Okay, and I have put that workflow at the global configuration level for roles. Okay. Now what I'm doing,
Can you
I'll
show me
submit a request.
create?
See, I created a user group. I've put that user group in the workflow, and my user group will have list of users inside it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay, so you requested the role for this group, right?
that is right. No, no, no. It's not like that. So what I have done, I'm sending my role request to a user group for approval. That's what I'm doing.
Okay, okay.
All right.
and any one of this user can approve that role request, right?
That's right. That's what I have put it as a configuration there.
And you are trying to log in now as any one of this user and then approve the request.
That's what I'm doing. Correct. I've created an SAV role. Using that SAV role, I log in as this one of the users and then approve it. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm requesting, where is it? Request enterprise roles. Correct. So okay, let me go back here. As an end user, you will see the screen anyhow. Okay. You may not see all the options, but as we have seen it in the earlier discussion, you would see limited options here or tiles. Okay. One of them should be request for enterprise roles. Okay. So I click on that tile. Okay. And choose the user I want. All right. So I'll select test user 4. Who's my user? I'll click on next, and all the roles which are active and which are requestable will be present here. So I have a total of 21 roles, okay, which are visible here. All right. So against all the roles, you have an option of adding it to the cart. All right. So let's add AMS test lead. Okay. You can meaning you can anyway see the composition of a role by clicking on the hyperlink against the role name. So I click on this. You can click on entitlements. You will see what are the entitlements part of that role. Okay. So I choose AMS team lead, for example. I click on checkout. All right. So there's no start date and end date. Okay. Although this field appears here, I do not have any uh, a condition wherein I need to have a start date and end date for enterprise roles. Okay. So I'll leave it as it is. I'll not touch it. I'll just put something in the comment test. Okay. Test. And I submit this. Now what happens? It follows a similar pattern of a normal access request, an application access request, right? So a request would be created, a request number would be generated for us against this particular user. All right, and this request is pending at a certain approver stage, which we will look at the request details, in a quick time in the next step, right? So, as an end user, I came to the platform. I requested for an enterprise role, for example, and I submitted it. Okay, what happens at a request or where it goes, etc., and all, I'm not bothered so much. Okay, on submission of this, my email goes to the approver, that is a user group, correct? So we have a user group configured. So my email goes to the user group for approval. Okay, cool. Now let's check request approve. Yeah. So I have a request created for enterprise roles. Okay, it's an enterprise role request. The type of the request is an enterprise role request. If it was an firefighter role request, it would have changed. Okay, so let me click on this. Why it is so slow? All right. So if you observe the assignee, right, so it is pending with multiple users here, which means that it has gone to our user group for approval. So if you're seeing at the bottom of the screen, okay, the assignee are list of users which are part of a user group. Okay, and you have the other basic details like the name of the role, when it has been submitted, etc. and all. All right. So it is right now pending for approval. I'm an admin, although I can approve it from here, but let's log in as an end user. Okay, not as an end user, but as an assignee or an approver, and see that particular view as well. Okay. So now I have kind of logged in as a approver. Okay, so this is the person of an approver, or this is the avatar of an approver. Correct. So when the approver logs in to the system after checking his email, okay, then he comes and lands in this particular page. Okay, What are we exposing to the approver? We are exposing only the tiles which are related to role approvers. Okay. So I have an emergency access. I can request for an emergency access. I can request for enterprise roles, and in my approver section, I can approve the request which is pending against me. Okay. So if I go back to the home screen, okay, let me add the approver section as well here. Okay. SAV roles, SAV roles, role approver. Okay. So I would say request history and request approver as well, for example. Let me refresh my screen. So we have the request history and request approver section or tiles coming up as well, right? So what I'll do as an approver, I'll click on request approval. Okay, I can check the request here. Just click on the hyperlink against the request ID. It shows that it is pending at 3 people currently or 3 assignees, correct? So our workflow says that the request can be approved by any one of the approvers or users present under that particular user group. Okay, so as I logged in with 9001, okay, and I approve this, right, the request will get completed. Okay, because our first level is user group. If the user group is not approving within 7 days, it escalates to the manager. Okay, that's what I have put a escalation block as well. All right, but on a primary level, my first level of approver is a user group. After escalation, it goes to a manager for approval. Okay, you can check the workflow later. All right. So I logged in as an approver. All right. Then I can accept this. Okay. So I'll do an accept all, and I can confirm it. All right. So the request has been approved. Okay. If you look at in request history, okay, the request is completed currently. Okay. So I do not have any requests right now to approve. My part is done. All right. Now I come back to Saviynt platform. Okay. I'm already logged in as an admin. Okay. I click on request approval. Okay. There is no request is approved for approval. I'll check request history. Okay. This request has been completed. All right. So what is the other step? After every request which is completed, Saviynt will generate tasks for that particular request, okay, or type of a request, okay. As this is a enterprise role addition request, okay, if you look at the list of pending tasks, the tasks will also talk about what they need to actually do, okay. For example, what is this? 1 second, right? Entitlement task should start. Sure, December 1st, 2020. Let's retry this one more time. One second. Okay, or else let me explain this option. Yeah. Let me explain this. Okay. During request, right? So there, I mean, I'm not sure if you would have seen it. There's a start date and end date option as well, correct? During a request submission level. Okay. Right now, we do not have them as mandatory attributes, okay, or required attributes in the global configuration. Okay. So I just left them and I submitted a request. Okay. So this part I need to check and come back to you that why it is taking a start date of 2 a.m. December 1st. Okay, because I have not mentioned anything as a start date, it might have calculated uh, uh, say certain time interval, right? Okay, from the request submission level, and then added that number of hours to it. Okay, so let's check that as well once. Okay, so the due date is, that's a end date. Okay, when is the request start is 225. Okay, why it is showing in this? It's a request submission date. Start date is 224. Request. Hmm. There's something different. 24 December 1st to 24. See, for the earlier request, it was taking the date properly. For this one, I'm not sure why it is taking this December 1st. Anyways, yes. So, alright. So, this current request, right? So somehow Saviynt has considered, or I don't know whether it is a bug or not, the start date. Okay, the start date for this particular request is December 1st, 2:26 a.m. Okay, which is a date and time ahead of the current date and time. Okay, so for this, and right now we do not have any task created like our previous request, correct? A normal ARS request. So right now, I just have a request completed, but my tasks will be generated on December 1st to 26 a.m. Okay, that's when the start date. That's when the task will be generated based upon the start date of the request. Okay, so let's talk about that particular example. Okay, uh, say for example, right? Let me try to re-request again. Request enterprise roles. All right, and I'm requesting for a particular user called as test user 3. Okay. Let's consider that example. So I'm selecting IT consulting. Okay, I do a checkout. So if you might have observed, I left these two fields as empty in my previous request selection or request submission, right? So that's how Saviynt kind of took a date as a start date, which is kind of ahead of the current timestamp. So currently it is the 30th of November, 8:17 a.m. the system date and time. Okay, so it has taken some kind of date and time of 1st of December. Okay, I'll do the calculation a bit later and come back to you that why it has taken a December 1st. But okay, considering this that I have my start date and end date as mandatory. Okay, I select a particular start date and end date. Say for example, I want my request to be approved at this particular date and time. Okay, so I'll say that it is 8:17 right now. Okay, I want my request to be or I want my access to be started at 8:20 of November. Consider it like that. Okay, I want my access starting from November 30, 8:20 a.m. till November 30, 8 p.m., 8:20 p.m. for example. Okay, so I'm keeping a duration of 12 hours, right? So I'll put test. I'll submit this. Okay, this will anyhow get submitted. Okay, let's approve this. All right, accept, confirm. Okay, now let's check what happens or what are the dates which are coming up against that particular request. Okay, so 62 is my request. Okay, which has been submitted for this user called as test user 3. Okay, it went to so and so users for approval, but I have already kind of approved it as an admin user. All right, now if we look at the request history, so I'm right now at a request history page. If you see this is the request history page for test user 3. In the earlier example, these dates were not appropriate. Okay, or these dates were not exactly clear. All right, so if you look at here, okay, if you look at here, we are saying that sorry, we have said that the request or my access has to commence from um, 8:20 a.m. of 30th November. Okay, but again, if we look at here, the system has taken a date of December 1st, 6 p.m. Correct? Now, why this difference is coming up? All right. So this machine, okay, this machine could be in a different time zone. Okay, I'm specific use and specific time. Hmm. So this machine right now, from where we are submitting the request, is in Pacific time. Okay, so that's why for us, when we are submitting a request, we are selecting 8:20 to be the start time for my access to be granted. Okay, but what Saviynt has done is it has converted 8:20 into the time zone on which the server is currently. Okay, so this server, I don't know whether this is where it is hosted. 8:20 December 1st plus, so that is 8:20, so it's 6 o'clock, right? They're asking it to start at 8:20, 8:20, 6 p.m. So that is like 6 plus 3, 9.5 hours. 9.5 hours. I'm just trying to understand in which time zone the server is. This is a Windows mission. Shit. This works. So then, how do I find out time zone?
I'm not sure about this because this might be because the server is hosted on a different time zone.
Okay, so it could be because
Oh,
that this particular 9:28 a.m. is the PDT time zone, Pacific time zone, and the place where the server could be hosted or the database is residing could be in a different time zone. So that's why there's a difference here. Okay.
okay,
Usually, it should
okay,
not happen like this. See, the dates which should be reflected here should be the time zone from where you're logging onto the system. Okay, these should not be the time zones where the server is hosted or something like that. Okay, so that is something which we need to check. Okay, it should not ideally happen at your side. Okay, whenever you are implementing your application or wherever your enterprise application is running, right? The Saviynt enterprise application is running. So it should not happen. So from wherever you are browsing the application or from which region you are browsing the application, everything has to reflect that particular time zone. Okay. So this I'm really not sure why it is coming up like this. Okay. I mean, although it's picking up the time zone, but I'm just trying to understand which time zone, etc., and all the system is. But that's the overall
okay.
picture.
So now that this is on the December 1st, right? So this
Correct.
task will be executed the next day, right? It will not be done today.
Correct. Correct. So I'll talk about that quickly. So if you look at pending tasks, I do not have any task related to that particular request of enterprise role. Correct. This is an old task related to DO application. Correct. Now,
Mhm.
for such kind of tasks which will be created in the future, okay, Saviynt has a job in the utility, okay, wherein you run the job frequently, okay, which is called as enterprise role management job. Okay, what is the purpose of this job? Okay, any request, understand it like this, irrespective of whether it is an enterprise request or any request, any type of a request, okay? Any type of a request wherein there is a start date and end date are involved, okay? Wherein there is a time and it's a time bound request. Understand it like this, okay? Any request which is time bound, okay, wherever there's a start date and end date involved, we need to have this job running so that Saviynt will read the start date of all such requests, okay, whenever it matches with the current time zone of the current timestamp of the server, okay, wherein your application is hosted or wherein your MySQL is hosted, basically, okay, which is the database, correct? So this job continuously reads ARS request table, the table which we have seen it earlier, okay, this particular table, okay, okay, it continuously reads this table, okay, it checks the request date, all right, it continuously checks that particular table and the request date column. If it matches with the current timestamp of the system, okay, it creates tasks for that particular request, okay. So you need to have this job created and schedule it to run, say, every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, for example. So let me say every 5 minutes, for example, okay. So this is one thing which you need to remember whenever you are working around requests which are time bound. Okay. So always remember whether it is an enterprise or a normal ARS request which involves start date and end date. Even normal ARS requests can you can configure a start date and end date against them. Okay. Uh, okay. So for such kind of requests wherein there is a time frame involved, you need to have this job configured and schedule it to run on a less frequency. So, for example, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes, so that it continuously hits the table. Uh, if the request timestamp matches with the current timestamp of the server, then it creates tasks for that. Okay. Point number one. Point number two. Okay. So you have a request wherein the request start date is, so right now it is 8:30 a.m. correct? So I'm submitting a request, okay, wherein my request start date is 8:30. Okay, it's 8:29. My request start date is 8:30. Okay, somebody has submitted a request of that kind. Okay, and they will complain saying that my tasks are not created or my access has been not approved. Okay, in such situations, what you need to debug is that check when is the start date of the request first. Okay, the other thing, check when the request has been approved. Okay, so the user can complain saying that 8:29 I submitted a request. Sorry, 8:29 I submitted saying that 8:30 my request has to be approved. Okay, so your start date for your request approval is 8:30. Okay, the approver approves the request at 8:35, for example. Okay, in such situations, the task would not be generated. The request will be discontinued. Why is it? Because the approver approves the request after the start date. Okay, you 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 got the point, right? Meaning there has to be a time interval between the request start time and the request fulfillment time, okay, or when the request has been submitted to the request fulfillment time or the start time. Okay, so if in this scenario the request would be discontinued. Okay, that's the first example, or one of the scenarios. Okay, uh, then what? Yeah. So after the start date has reached, okay, the system will read the timestamp and start creating tasks for you. All right. The provision job will pick these tasks and provision it. Okay. The second point, or the other point which we need to remember is the user need not to come and submit a deprovision or a remove role request there. Okay. However, he has selected an end date of the request, okay, at the request level for the access to be deprovisioned. Saviynt will automatically read that end date, okay, and create deprovisioning tasks at that particular end date or whenever that particular end date is reached. Okay, so that's the advantage or another feature which is there at this time bound request. Okay, So again, the same job which we have created it earlier, enterprise role management job, it will continuously read the table and generate tasks for deprovisioning whenever the timestamp matches with the end timestamp of the request. Okay, that's another point which you need to remember. All right. So that's primarily kind of a role request. Okay. Configuration related to a role request, the flow of a workflow, wherein you put the workflow. Okay. Generation of a task. Okay. From where you submit a request. Okay. All your enterprise role requests will be submitted from a tile called as request enterprise roles. Okay. All your emergency or firefighter role requests will be submitted from this particular tile called as request emergency access roles. Okay, so I click on next. I should see only one firefighter role which we have it currently. Okay, we had just created one manual, a sample firefighter role manually, if you remember, right? So I see only one single firefighter role here. Okay, so there are two different tabs. For requesting the firefighter access, you request it from request emergency access style. Okay. For requesting enterprise roles, you do it from the request enterprise role style. Okay. So I think that's all. Yeah, I think that's all. We can check manage enterprise roles a bit later. That's not very important right now. Manage and creation, that's not very important. But on a high level, yeah, these are the places where you request workflow involved, and what happens at a start date and end date concept. Okay. I wanted to show you that email templates configurations as also there, which is important. Okay. Any implementation you do, that is must and should. Anybody requires an email template, correct? So that is why I was kind of chasing them up. But let's see if they do it or not. Okay. So that's the other thing, and we'll check all these configurations tomorrow.